My vintage build started after a drunken bid on eBay, and that netted me this 1984 Colnago Profil CX frame set, and that was just for $355 plus another $100 for taxes and shipping. All our parts had to be imported because nothing was available locally, so it took me over 4 months to actually complete. So now let's take a closer look at the bike and examine some of the advantages and disadvantages of buying or building a vintage bike. The frame actually weighs 2.125 kilograms and the front forks weigh 697 grams, so that's approximately 2.8 kilos in all. When you compare that to something like my Trekker SL6, the total weight, frame and forks, comes in at just over a kilogram, so yeah, it's a couple of kilograms heavier. But the interesting thing is, if you build this bike up to the same specs as my Monda SL6, this could come in at sub 10 kilos. The crimping here was an attempt to improve the aerodynamics. It was first featured on the Colnago Nuevo Mexico. That was released in 1983. This bike was released in 1984, but the production of the Nuevo Mexico continued. There's very little information about this bike, and you can't find a catalogue for it. It's a little bit of an enigma, quite honestly. One of the potential downsides of a steel frame is rust, but this one, it's a pretty clean example. And there's a few marks and scratches, and it's nearly a 40-year-old frame, but on the whole it's pretty much rust free. I think this has had a good life. I bought it from Italy and I think it's just been out in the sun. I opted predominantly for Campagnola 15-year-old drivetrain components, which were made up mostly from new old stock. I think that they retain the look of much more expensive equivalent parts. I ruled out the option of using older parts because I thought, firstly, it was going to significantly increase the expense of the build, and secondly, it would have increased the problems with reliability. Additionally, I ruled out the option of using a more modern group set, as I thought that would just ruin the overall aesthetic of the bike. The rear derailleur, it was the only Campagnola drivetrain component I couldn't get as new old stock, including the bottom bracket, but I did manage to get this 15-year-old used part, and it still works beautifully. At the front, I've got a Campagnola 10-speed 5339 chainring, and at the rear it's a 10-speed 1128, and it's a Shimano. Now, Campagnola fans, please don't burn my house down or send me hate mail. There were reasons I chose a Shimano cassette, and we're going to take a look at those right now. I took these Bontrager race wheels from my Trekker SL6, and I therefore chose to keep the Shimano hub and fit it with a 10-speed Shimano cassette. Because I fitted the bike with friction shifters, there's no compatibility issues with mixing Campagnola and Shimano components. One of the things you need to be aware of with older bikes is that the distance between the two dropouts, it's too narrow for a modern wheel. To increase the distance, I had to pull the rear dropouts apart. I did that using some basic tools to cold set the frame to the desired distance. Additionally, I had to file out the dropouts from 8 to 10 mils, otherwise again it wouldn't have accommodated a modern day hub. With those alterations made, it's now no problem at all to fit a modern wheel. That saved me a load of cash, and also it gives the bike a lot more versatility. The brakes there, Centaur as well. I chose these, they're just very much in keeping with the bike. I think they look really good. These are new old stock as well, and they provide plenty of stopping power. I mainly ride on the flat anyway, so it's no problem. The only issue I have with them, and it's the same as my Monda, is the clearance will only take a 25mm. It looks that you'd be able to get a 28mm tyre on, but honestly you can't. This is only good for 25mm. Disappointing, but it's an old bike, you can't have everything. I'm currently using Continental GP 5000 25mm. When I built the bike up originally, I had some hand-me-down GP 4000 23mm, which were okay, but the extra couple of mils, it does make the bike more comfortable. It's still a shame that I can't get a 28mm on though. These are Ultegra pedals. I took them off my Trekker, and I'm pleased I did. Originally I tried with the flat pedals and straps, but they just hurt my feet. I didn't like them, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to go with a modern pedal. It just makes for a better ride. I went for friction shifters rather than indexed gears, and that's because I think they just look so right. These are period correct. They come from the 80s. How beautiful do they look? Honestly, when you change gear, it's almost like you're playing a musical instrument. You just feel them into the right spot. Very, very, very satisfying. I love these. I love these shifters. A nightmare to set up. The internals I had some issues with, but now super smooth to actually change gear with. Love them. At the back, I've gone for another period piece from the 80s, Ritchie stem. This is really nice. And at the front, I just haven't been able to find a period correct stem. So this is a make do at the moment. I should put some more effort into finding something better, but it works, it's okay. I've had to angle it upwards just for back issues really. I prefer it to sit a little bit lower and actually be flat, but my back says no. So this is the compromise really. The cockpit's a pretty simple affair. Along with this new quilt stem, I've got new bars. These are 42 centimeters wide, too narrow I think. They look great, but I really need 44 or 46 centimeters. And if I can find myself some more affordable vintage stock, then I will be changing those at some point. They're also quite narrow here. They're narrower than traditional new bars, and for my hands I think I need to really double wrap these, which I haven't done. That would improve the comfort for me. Brakes are fine, just a inexpensive pair of Grand Campe. They work well. I'm quite happy with the performance and the look. The saddle's just a inexpensive Chinese affair. It works okay. I've ridden 100 kilometers on this. It's not the most comfortable, but then I bought it for looks more than anything. Before this I put the Brooks saddle on it, because when I first bought the Brooks saddle I didn't have my Surly long haul trucker, so I used the bike to break it in. But once I got the long haul trucker, I took the Brooks off and put this white saddle on, and I prefer the overall look with the white bars. I just think it looks better. The headset's Campagnola record. It's 35 years old, same as the bike. The price was astronomical, but a modern headset, it wouldn't have worked. And this headset, it just looks magnificent with the bike. So how much does this 35-year-old bike weigh? Just under 10 kilograms for a 40-year-old bike. That's about the same weight as a modern all-aluminium road bike with a Shimano Ultegra group set. How cool is that? So what was the total build cost? And this is the real surprise, because it came out at 40,990 baht, which is $1,225. Now that's really cheap. Admittedly, some of the parts came off my old Trekker, including the wheels and the pedals, but that's still a great price. For the bike you get at the end of it, I think it's phenomenal. Undertaking a vintage build can be an awful lot of fun, but there are problems that you can expect along the way. I think the biggest of those is just trying to find parts. If you're looking for vintage period correct parts, or alternatively new old stock, they're actually pretty hard to source these days, and that's become increasingly the case. Even new parts are getting hard to source. Also the price, wow, some of the prices are just eye-watering. The price I paid for this headset, it was pretty steep, but if you look at the price of old Campagnola record group sets, wow, you want to think about selling a kidney. The prices are insane, they really are. So that's one of the main things I would say you have to contend with, trying to find the parts and then actually affording to pay for them. However, a vintage build doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy an expensive frame. Maybe there's an old frame knocking around you can use. That was the case for me when I was just 15. I had my eye on my dad's old track bike. That was hanging on the wall in the garage. I took it down and I built a fantastic touring bike, and I used that for around 7 or 8 years and absolutely loved it and didn't spend much on it. So maybe there's an old frame someone's giving away, or someone has an old bike that they've used as an old commuter to work or college, and you could take that and build that up. So it's not always an expensive pastime, but if you are going for a really nice quality frame and you want to make it period correct, put some good parts on it, yeah, that can get rather expensive. I think it's worth it because you get a great deal of satisfaction from having built something yourself. And not only that, but when you do get to ride it, you're riding around on something completely unique that you've made with your own hands, and you can't really put a price on that. I never regret for 1 second having bought this frame and built this bike up. It's something that I'll keep forever and hopefully pass on to my ungrateful son who'll sell it on eBay. If you want to see what it's like out on the road, check out my next video when I take it out for a ride. On screen now are links to some of my other videos touring around Thailand. Thanks for watching, enjoy your bikes, enjoy your rides, and I'll see you in the next video.